Welcome to Money Making Sense, the show that talks about all things money. Today, we're at Sundance Film Festival. It's virtual this year, so we're actually talking to everybody via Zoom. And today, I have with me the filmmakers of Hallelujah, Victor, Gabriel, and Duran Jones. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Appreciate it.
All right, so I want to start with Hallelujah is actually one of the short films submitted to Sundance Film Festival. Do you already have further distribution set up, or is this is the first time anybody's going to see it is at Sundance?
Yes, this is the first time anyone's going to see it. It's a world premiere at Sundance.
Nice. And when does that happen?
Today, actually, the 20th. I think as of today, the day that we're recording, it's premiering on premiering virtually.
Great. And so people can still buy tickets and see this throughout the entire festival, not just on the premiere. So there will be other dates throughout the festival. Do you have any distribution in the future already set up for this film?
No, not as of yet. Not as yet. We're open, of course, but not as of yet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I do want to get into the subject matter of Hallelujah without giving away too much so that people will watch it. It was very moving for me to see the struggles that these two men had about taking care of their niece and nephew. Yeah. So whose idea was it to tell that story?
Well, it was my idea. And I think I told you before, ahead of that, it comes from a feature script, right? And the feature script is about the boy, about the boy. And this proof of concept short film focuses on kind of like the uncles, and they're having to struggle with, are we going to take care of like our nephew, who's very weird and odd, and eccentric? Are we going to take care of him? Are we going to take care of our niece? And, it's sort of asking, will they rise to the challenge of being men? Are they going to rise to the challenge of being caretakers? At some point, boys must grow into men. And this is one of those moments where, like, they're like, okay, we're going to be adults. We're going to be men. And we're going to think of something and other better than ourselves. And it's just basically kind of chronicling, like, how when they came to that decision.
Right. And Duran, how do you fit in this storytelling?
Well, basically, I'm here to support Victor's voice. As a producer, that's my primary job, is to, honor the art in a way and put it in a position to be made the best possible way it can. We had a very small budget for this one, and we were under a little bit of a time crunch, but we knew we had the feature in mind for this, as Victor was saying. And the only way to do that is to do an effective short for where we stood. So we put our heads together. We got as many resources as we could, and we really rallied our community of AFI friends and friends from all over Los Angeles. We used Vic's actual home to shoot the film, and it's really one of those kind of guerrilla, filmmaker stories of what do we have and what can we get out of this, and it's working well for us.
Yeah, I read that in the description of the film, Victor, that you actually used your backyard and a neighbor's front yard. Is that correct? Now, did you have to pay the neighbor for the use of their yard?
Nah, Miss Louise is down. She down. So she was all the way with it. She was all the way with it. So it's fine. It's just community. So it was all right. We didn't have a lot of money anyway, so we had to get. The reason it was in my backyard was because of money, and it was just gonna be easier, but. The story was already going to be in Compton, so it made sense. I had a different place I wanted to shoot it at, but I was going to take more money. I was going to take more conversations with people. I was like, let's just shoot in my backyard, and we'll figure it
out. I think that's also the beauty of not only what he's able to create, but just who he is as a person. He was able to rally the community around him. We had some of his neighbors giving us extra tents. People stopping by, like, hey, if you got any problems, let us know. Like, all of those things, it was really a community effort. So we're glad to be able to highlight that.
So, Victor, what was the biggest expense for you? Was it the film equipment? Did you buy it? Did you rent it? Because you said that you didn't have much money. I mean, was this all put on credit cards? Are you still having to pay that off? I mean, what's...
No, I mean, it was a combination of just people giving some money, some give 5,000, give 5,000. My my partner, she is gave a good amount of money. She paid for most of it. She paid for most of it. So shout out to Dr. Alexandria Smith. She paid for a good portion of it. And then we had another executive producer who chipped in some money. I chipped in some money. So it was really just the people around me who love me. So who want to see me win.
That is awesome. I do want to go into a little bit about the socioeconomic neighborhood that
Yes.
this is set in. Because one of the things that struck me, I don't want to give too much away, but there was sort of that apex of the film when the parents asked the uncles to take the kids into the house. I mean, it was just like almost casual. I mean, in a way, it's like, oh, just go into the house. But I mean, is this how people live in that neighborhood all the time? You see people coming down the street and it's like, oh, everybody get into your house.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think it's one of those situations where it's like it's nowhere near as bad as you think it is, but then there are those seasons where it's as bad or worse than you think it is. I guess is the best way I can say it. It is a poor community. It is a poor community. There are gangs, but particularly where I was living, where I live, like it's families mostly. You know what I'm saying? But then you'll randomly hear, oh, such and such got shot, or blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying? But really, I tend to focus on the communal aspect. I tend to focus on the connection, because what's always dope to me about just like being in poverty, being someone who was in poverty, is the innocence and the mundane nature of living that happens in lower socioeconomic context. Like no one thinks that it's a lower socioeconomic context until like I'm an adult and I've like read a bunch of books. And then I have an analysis of like why this is here, et cetera, et cetera. But I choose to focus on that this is just in the background, and then here's you guys living, and then how's that background some like affect you? Oh, I can't go get a job, or they only pay me this much money, or I'm like, what happens when I get fired? Like how to provide for my family. Well, I just tell a regular story. Like the stuff is always there hovering. You know what I'm saying? In the background, every once in a while it might spring up and affect. This is one of those inexplicable moments, like which is what's happened to me. I've seen moments which like, oh, everything's fine, then inexplicably, boom, everything changes, right? And so that's sort of like it doesn't make sense type of film I wanted. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't make sense, but I think I don't think loss makes sense.
Right. This may be a deeper dive than you
For sure
were expecting to go into, but you did bring up why I can't get a job. I mean, where does that start? Does that start because the neighborhoods that your film centers on, that where the people are growing up, they don't have as good of education? I mean, why can't you just move somewhere else where you can get a better education or find a job? As playing devil's advocate here.
Sure. Well, it's very complicated because I have done a little like researching here and there. I would say that if the school system is not great, hypothetically, if like there's high policing, and if also the education you're getting is not, like I said, not great, like the skills you learn are not going to be high, particularly if you're not pushed to go to like higher education. If you're not pushed to go to higher education and stuff like that, you're going to end up having the majority of the community making like what, 30, 40, maybe a month, not a month, a year, right? And that can be very difficult if you're like unskilled. If you don't have like, I have a master's degree. I'm one of the privileged ones. I have 2 master's degrees. You know what I'm saying? I got my clinical psychology and my MFA. So for me, there's more opportunities to like so I live in Compton, but I like at the moment, you know what I'm saying? The idea is to move somewhere else and to be able to like raise my family somewhere else. But there's still a strong community here. So you can move if you want to, but who has the resources to move? if this is a place you can afford, right? You know, and then that means, well, then I can get a job. But if a job I can only get is gonna pay me like minimum wage, like where else are you gonna go? And then it goes back to, well, then maybe you should go to school. You know what I'm saying? I guess you go to school, but have you been taught well? I know too many people like where school is just too difficult and don't push them to be as invested. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest with you, I don't know, since you're the money makes sense person, maybe you could tell me. But from my knowledge, like, doesn't like the average man make like 45, 50K a year? Like, isn't that like around there?
Yeah, if you take the entire like US average salary, it's right about $48,500. So
Yeah.
But that, again, it's an average. You've got a lot of people making more than that, and you have a lot more people making less than that.
100%. And even that's hard to get. I remember when I was like hovering around 50, I still hover around that just at my regular job. I can't do nothing. I can't provide for my family on 50K. I can't do nothing. So I think you end up staying where you're staying because you've been there for years. Your family's been there for years. You have a house. That's great. And then I think the best thing, you just hope to be in a community where you guys can make things work. And I believe in making things work where you're at. I don't think that you gotta move and leave somewhere. I think you figure out, how do I make the people I am with now better? How can we make each other better? And I come from a communal perspective anyway. It's like, we got to be with each other, and we got to figure out. It's on us. Me and Duran always talk about that. It's on us as Black men to figure out what's going on. I'm not trying to leave it up to anybody else except me and him, or me and whoever, to figure out the problems in my community, or figure out the problems in anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? And that has to happen with us being present. And if we just shake and dip to another place, which we can and probably should at times, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying we don't do that. But always got to have a foot and try to figure out how to make it better for the kids and the children and the boys. You know what I'm saying? Which is sort of like what the two uncles are figuring out, you know? Yeah. How can we make this better? They could have left. They could have left them kids in foster care. They left their nephews. It's not their children, but they decided to step to the plate, and that's what I believe.
Yeah. Duran, is your background similar to Victor's, or do you have a little bit different story?
A little different. I was raised in the suburbs, but I kind of had one foot in, one foot out. My father's from Southeast DC. My mom's from Southern Maryland. So I have family in both type of situations. And that was one of the things that really struck me in reading Victor's work, is like, I know these characters, you know, I know these situations, I understand this environment, and I understand what he's trying to say, even to what we're breaking down now, right? We're talking about whether you should leave or whether you should go, but systematically, the more people leave, the worse the condition gets, because nobody's actually invested in the community. And that's one of the beautiful things that we were able to do, is have a community rally around this effort and come together. Now, imagine if we would have taken that same gusto, but everybody's gone now, you know, because the environment's what the environment is. There's a part of it that collectively we need to stay amongst each other in order to make these things happen. And we've talked about that from the basis of our relationship, of us sticking this out together and being accountable to one another in the telling of this story and the future endeavors that we have in our careers.
Right. Victor, since you are a therapist, have gotten your degree there, how do gangs affect your, money earning potential? If I decide at a young age, nope, I want my homies with me, they're going to protect me, I'm going to protect them. I don't understand that society of gang members where you can go out and have a career and yet be in a gang. Or is that not?
Well, I can only speak so much on like gang life. I'm not from gangs, and I typically have like my thoughts about, like, I leave like the gang, like a lot of the gang conversation to gang members, because they're good at talking about. My homies are much better at talking about these sort of things than I am. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to like pretend. But I would say that for a long time, like particularly in LA, like gangs were about community work. It just, through crack era, through policing, things changed. And there's responsibility. I'm not the person who thinks that there's no accountability, that it's just like people get through what they want to do and then blame it on oppression. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that oppression did change what the original intent of the games were, which were community work. And then at that point, now we're in a whole new world, and some of like the little homies or people who I've mentored or done therapy with, like it's difficult. It just is. It's just difficult to get out of it once you get in it. The people who you see who like made money are like exceptions to the rule, like exceptions to the rule, in my opinion. Or there are people who like maybe weren't like got out, started doing work, like creating businesses. And I have seen a good number of people like create businesses. Like, I don't know if you're at a Trap Kitchen. Trap Kitchen is like two game bangers, one from South Central, one from Compton, and they have a big like food truck business, and they're making a lot of money, right? They make a lot of money. And that's an example I like to see of just like guys who like switch things around. I know. So there's a good number of people, whether it's music or little businesses, trucking businesses, people who are in the streets and then started trying to make something of themselves. And then of course, we have a good number of people that make it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, I can only speak so much because it's not my lifestyle. So I can only speak so much, but I can speak to what I've seen and people I've talked to.
Right. It's just an area that I don't get a lot of people talking to me about their experiences. And not that you were in a gang, but just that is one area of my show where it's been very difficult to explain why it's so difficult to get out of that situation, why that socioeconomic plane just
I can get you a person to talk to you. I can get you a person to talk to you.
That would be great.
I can get you a person to talk to you. Give me information and I'll shoot it to him. He'll be more than willing to talk to you.
Awesome. We'll do that right after this show.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing? I think a part of the issue of the understanding of the complexity of the situation is the assumption that's in the question, right? That it's either gangs or career. And I think that doesn't shed light on the systematic approach to it, which is basically that the resources in this environment and where we are lacking in a way that the support from certain parts of the community actually help these kids in a certain way who may have some trauma or their family may not be able to support them in certain ways. So here steps in said person from the neighborhood that's able to give that support and that help. And I think taking the onus off of what our system and what our government is doing and putting it on gangs is just the wrong way to approach the question. I think we need to really ask what's actually going on in these environments from a place of how we could actually help. What are our tax dollars doing? And I don't think enough questions are around that as opposed to the individual, which America likes to tout.
No, I agree. And that's also like, I don't even know the questions to ask. So, it would help to learn and to understand that, to enable to ask those questions so that we know where the help is needed. I think that's a huge issue, especially for the white community. I mean, I'm one of the privileged and I'm like, I don't know what to ask. How do I know? So, yeah. All right.
To be honest, let me say something, Heather, but also to be honest, in like poor white communities, the same stuff arises. The same questions arise, like gangs, in poor communities, like gang violence is higher, like births out of wedlock children, like all the children, no fathers, like it gets all the things that people tend to think are specific to like Black people or poor Black people happens in any context where there's poverty across the board.
Oh yeah,
across the board. You go to Boston right now. Whatever poor section of Boston, you're gonna see the same. You're gonna see the same things, just different.
Yeah,
you're gonna see the same things. Obviously, completely different, but you're gonna see some similarities in terms of the gang violence and et cetera, or just violence in general. Yeah. And I just think when you have communities who can't find a way to really take care, particularly men, take care of their families, money, I think you have things that arise to try to figure out how to do it. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. Well, going back to sort of tying this in with your short film, Hallelujah, the uncles are having to make this decision, and you had said they could have easily just walked away. They could have left the kids in foster care. Why is it that that is such a huge option in that community to just like, I don't need to deal with this, I can walk away?
Well, I don't know if it's huge. I don't know if it's a huge option. I would push back against it being a huge option. I specifically took for the film that it is an option for them, but it's more of a internal like conflict they're having, because I think that they want to still be young men with no responsibilities, right? And part of this is just pushing them to like, well, what are you going to do now? You're going to step to the plate. And to be honest with you, there is always someone in the community who tends to take care, who can't always, I shouldn't say always. There are people who can take care of the kids, sometimes grandma, sometimes auntie, but then there's a lot of kids who don't have. I worked with kids in like foster care who are living in other places, and it can be difficult. I don't think the option is to leave, but I do think that at times it can be difficult to choose to stay. If you're like, say you're like a 15-year-old girl, I worked with a bunch of girls on the street, right? And they were like 15, 14-year-old girls, sex workers, right? Essentially like prostitutes, essentially. I hate to use as crass a term, but they're called CSEC, right? Commercially sexually exploited children. I mean, what happens if you're 16, you got a kid, but you've been in foster care, now you got a kid, but you got a pimp and they're doing sex work? Like, I don't know, like, it's not a lot of options afforded to you. Now I'm picking an extreme example, but that is something I work with. So sometimes the options which we think we have are not present. I do agree, like philosophically, that you always have a choice, to be clear. You know what I'm saying? To be clear. But part of my duty as like a Black man in my community is to say, hey, our options are our choices and you are supported and we're going to figure this out together. Outside of that, the options feel very minimal and you just are trying to survive. And when you're in a survival mindset, like you can do whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You just do whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else about your movie or the socioeconomic situation where your movie is set, your film that you want to talk about?
No. Thank you.
Duran, anything to add?
Yeah, I think this discussion just overall is important. You know, us coming from different backgrounds and being able to give you certain information and asking the right questions. But I think that the great thing about what Victor is doing and playing with some of the actual comedy of this film and this piece, and bringing some levity and some light to it, but also highlighting some of these more systematic things, I think that's important as well, because it allows you to see the humanity in these Black men who are suffering from traumatic experiences, but also rallying together, you know, to support their families and ultimately do the right thing. And that's a lot of the stories that we have in our community, and it's not often shown of us specifically. And I think that's something that Vic and I both connect on, is that we want to highlight stories of Black men who are doing positive things. And there's a lot of us that are doing that. So I hope you do get that opportunity to speak to, you know, some of those things and some of the people that Vic will connect you with.
It's exactly the same. You know, when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of female role models for me to look at when I was growing up, and it would be exactly the same to have positive male Black role models for your community as well.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you again. We have Victor Gabriel. He's the writer, director of Hallelujah, and also Duran Jones, a filmmaker helping to bring Hallelujah to the Sundance Film Festival.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Thanks for listening. You can email me with any questions or topics you want to hear about at hkelly@ksl.com. That's HKELLY@ksl.com. And because this is Money Making Sense, you can subscribe for free on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, and you'll never miss another episode.
Thanks for being a Money Making Sense listener. Follow your common sense on the social media. Money Making Sense on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.